A and S.
Well, if I have to read something, we might have to slow it down a little just because
Hold it back and...
I don't think
I imagine poet Julie Carr reading Underscore, a book of poems dedicated to Nancy Stark Smith and Jean Valentine, both of whom passed in 2020. Julie's mastery of language seamlessly fuses with her rivered intonation, so that when she reads, a hush folds over everyone in the room. You, dear listeners, have to experience it, and I can't imagine a better way to begin our episode than Julie Carr reading her poetry for you.
Yeah. Yeah. This one's called New Year, and this is for Jean. So for Jean Valentine, 1934 to 2020. The basement, green and cold behind 3 doors. Here was the middle one, which you know. In whitewashed walls, your hand had curved around its pen. It was your kitchen where you draw your brows, and the phone rang, your daughter. She wanted you to go to an appointment to check your head. You laughed. I remember things, you said. I'm sitting here with... Said my name, but it was a question. It was the night we became again human, though tired, though old, though you did not call back through the whole night, though I had to be in a different room, chewing up the mirror. In the morning, you had a gift for us, a compass on a long chain, which you wore when you skipped ahead of me, descending into the station.
On the Ampersand, we call this bringing together of the impossible the alchemy of anding. Together, we'll hear stories of humans who imagine and create by colliding their interests. Rather than thinking of and as a simple conjunction in that conjunction-junction kind of way, we will hear stories of people who see and as a verb, a way to speak the beautiful when you intentionally let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. As St. Mary Oliver asks, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Oh, I love this question. When I'm mothering, creating, and collaborating, it reminds me to replace a singular idea of what I think I should become with a full sensory verb about experiencing. I'm Erika Randall. And this is Julie Carr on the Ampersand.
I was a child and I had a difficult emotional life in very young ages. And my mom, who was the reason I had the difficult emotional life, was also an amazing reader. And she had been an English major, so we had a lot of books in the house. And at some point, really young, I started reading poetry, super, super young. And then one of the poets that I read in some collection was Emily Dickinson. And then
That'll rock an 8-year-old world.
And I kept reading Emily Dickinson, and, you just read the ones that speak to you. But at the time it was I am nobody, who are you?
I heard a fly buzz when I died.
Well, that one came later. But the idea of being sort of nobody or writing this is my letter to the world that never wrote to me. And those lines, they spoke to this child who felt, isolated, lonely, a little bit outside of somehow something. And but they didn't just speak to it. It wasn't oh, here I'm describing an experience for you. It's rather, I'm helping you create an experience. So having read that, then I was oh, that's me. I'm lonely. Oh, that's me. I'm writing a letter to the world. And then that becomes me. So it doesn't just describe who you are, it just transforms who you are. And I think in that transformation, feeling that there was this writer, Emily Dickinson, knew nothing about her, who had sort of helped me make a me, then I had this intimate relationship with whoever she was, who I thought she was.
But you kept dancing.
Yeah, no. When I was young and wanted to be a dancer, I had to work through a lot of things I think a lot of dancers have to work through around, self-image and body image and stuff and self-worth to get to a point where dancing was a pleasure instead of like a punishment.
Does the poet work through those same exercises of self-worth?
It's really different. When I decided it's time to put dancing in a different category and put writing in a new category, so really shifting that, the hugest relief I felt was the escape from the body. And I don't mean that I don't have a body when I write, but that I realized that, okay, I don't have to have a particular body. I don't have to like train the body or punish the body or be mad at the body or suffer because the body had a problem. Now it's just the body gets to do what the body does, and whatever it is perfectly okay to work with. But maybe because I had, I wasn't so young when I started becoming a poet. Like I was already, in my late 20s. I don't know. That's very young. But like I wasn't so 18. Now. I don't know. Yeah. I was always writing poetry, but I wasn't trying to be a poet until, after I sort of was moving away from dance. So
But the two sit side by side for you now.
Yeah. So what is the relationship between them now? Yeah. So for me now, I get to be a lover of dance without having to be a performer. Mm-hmm. And that was something I think I kind of always wanted on some level, like to just be able to enjoy it
to be a dancer
and not watch it wondering if I was also able to do what they were doing. All those thoughts like, I'm not good enough. All that is, it's like there because I'm not trying to do it. I can do it if I want a little bit, but like I'm not on stage. And so I think that allowed dance to be a part of my life in a totally different way. And then also the newest book that I just wrote, which is called Underscore, is a tribute to two people. And one of them is Nancy Stark Smith. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like Nancy was my teacher for a long time. She was so many people's teacher. When she died, so this was in the beginning of COVID, so I think it was like maybe June of 2020 or something
That's
like
what
that.
I remember spring summer.
And Edwin Torres, who has also been in my life for a really, really long time, a poet and performer, a mover, and everythinger. He created one of the first Zoom reading events, and we asked me to do a durational performance, and Nancy had just died, so I said I would do a tribute to her. And then I made an hour-long dance of Nancy's, being evoked. Having done that, I think without immediately thinking it, I think I knew that I needed to pay tribute, that it was a way of paying tribute, and I needed to continue to pay tribute. And then when Jean Valentine died, who had been my most important poetry teacher, they both died within a few months of each other. And I was like, well, this is that moment in life, the age that I am, which is 57, when the elders are passing. So I have three other parents. They're, in their 80s or late 70s. And then, of course, teachers, and also peers are dying. And so having lost two teachers, I just felt like I knew this to be like a moment of real transition for me.
I would love to hear you read. I would love to hear.
I would love to read a couple of those. The title Underscore is a direct tribute to Nancy's The Underscore, which was her score that she invented over a long period of time and taught all over the world, and people still practice it all over the world. So I have actually a little essay at the end of the book that explains that and talks about what she and also Jean gave me. So maybe I'll read the poem that's called The Underscore.
I would love it.
The Underscore for Nancy Stark Smith, 1952 to 2020. Those birds, white-headed, black-winged, unafraid. Slow, comical song. They call to me, I call to them. Trying this key, then another, in the padlock. How it is, always was, July. Scarred sidewalks, mouthless choirs, ghost companions in the thicket. How the soil in the trowel folds inward like a jacket, and daughters without mothers fall backwards into bushes. Raspberry fingertips, tensed tongues, they test the broken edges of cups. how they work with people, how they get you ready to be touched, how the sun pours translucence into leaves, how the orange bead on a string around my neck was an orange bead on a string around yours, how the throat beats with blood and voice, coursing, coarse, sore. In this way we serve one another, with airdropped flowers in our phones. Who is missing you today? Who turned your camera off? Whose plane grazed the low cloud to release the rain that floods the back of my mirror again?
Who is missing you today?
Yeah.
I love the way you talk about the teachers, and to say that you put them in the past tense, and you said no. In that sense of the haunting that you talk about in so much of your work, it feels like this being haunted with good ghosts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have another?
I just want to read this one right now for my friend Peter Gizzi. He's still with us, but this speaks a lot to the thing we were talking about before about how somebody's writing enters you and becomes you and transforms you, because this poem I wrote to him is, in a way, borrowing his voice to write it, or I feel very much him in me as I'm writing it. And Peter's work, he just has a new book out that I was reading this last few days, and his work is just very central to how I understand the concept of the lyric in particular. And there's lots of different kinds of writing, but that's one. So it's called Good Morning for Peter. Good morning, smudged glass on the medicine chest. Good morning, sea of eyes, sea of shadows. It's to you and to every bit of summer's must that I've got my mind with my breathing. It was to find you today that I started this breath in a line of sound. Was always to find the sound of you, or the shuffle of your stance like an apology. Good morning to the dog with his nose in the air, to the park on my right side with its memory. The shade of you and the shade of me, slipping on ice with our hands linked. How a party for you was a party for me. How I thought of your voice in some daisies. Your voice that hangs out on the basement stair. Sometimes I go sit beside it. That's when the world gets all swirly, when I've got you with a smoke on a fire escape. Got you at picnics of crackers and oranges, since you are to me what this is. What might seem minimal is really maximal. I position myself toward you for all of it. So yeah, that thing about voice
and the shuffle of stance.
Yeah,
it's right there. The floating of your walk, the shuffle of his stance.
Yeah,
all coming in.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah, and then that sense of presence and absence. Like I think the feeling of Peter for me has something to do with his childhood grief, and so him sitting on the basement stair, as if
like you're in trouble.
He's a child and he's there, and I go find him.
And then it shifts to the fire escape, and then I'm with you in your 20s, watching a sunrise after being up all night, being way too wise for your years. When you're recreating these humans and these beloveds, how aligned is that to recreating folks you didn't know who were part of your ancestral past? Because I think about this book, The Mud, Blood, and Ghosts. You're really going back in time to reform, reshape, recurate the story of your ancestry, of other bodies that you may or may not love. Like when we, and that's a hard one. Yeah. Maybe we want to bring the person forward when we love them, but do we want to bring the person forward when we don't totally love them? And in this book, there's a lot of complexity around the humans you're bringing to the table.
Right.
Can you talk about this idea of how time and love change the way you might write or think or see about a person?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, So there's a few sort of central characters in Mud, Blood, and Ghosts. And the main one, of course, is Omer Madison Kem, who was my great-grandfather. And maybe I don't love him.
Maybe we don't love him.
Maybe we don't love him.
And that's okay.
He was, and maybe, he was an aggressive person, and he was, passionate, and he had some good ideas and some really, really, really bad ones. And so I guess what I'll say is, like, I never felt that I was conjuring Omer for who he might have really been.
Okay.
I felt like Omer had given me an entry point into a bunch of history that I needed because of him to know. I needed to know it because of him, because he was my ancestor, and he was calling me in that sense. But he wasn't ghosting me in that I didn't feel his presence as much as I took the opportunity of his stories to find these complicated stories. So
the things that they talked about, though, I mean, I'm thinking with you also. I'm thinking with you as a dancer, as a poet, as an activist, as a teacher, as a really potent voice in the communities that I know you in when you are advocating for students. And I think of you as also now in getting to research you as a gardener and as a person of land. Mm-hmm. Can you point to your gardening? Can you point to the land, the love of land, and the love of giving food away? And does that point back to the parts that you want to keep maybe from these ghosts? Does it feel connected, or does it feel totally new?
No, I think it does. And I'm glad you brought that up, because somebody asked me that and I didn't really answer it, and I've been sort of regretting not really answering it.
I'm so glad you get a chance to stop that regret.
That wasn't really fair what I said. I didn't really say everything. And I think there is a legacy. Maybe I didn't want to sound proud or something, but I feel like there is a legacy in the family that does have roots in Omer's populism, and maybe we should say a few words about what populism meant in the 1890s. I mean, he was a farmer, and he was, populism was a movement to resist corporatization, the monopolies, to resist the economic inequalities. And it's the Gilded Age, so there was a lot of economic inequality. And was aligned with the labor movement, and in fact was even a biracial movement for a little while. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of good things about that early populism, and there's probably a lot of good things about our versions of populism in some quarters. And so coming out of that is an idea of sort of like outrage and speaking out and like believing in some way in which economic inequality anyway, if not other forms of inequality, should be addressed, and should be addressed like by the whole fabric of society, not just by like, oh, well, let's try to be nice to people and give things away. I mean, that's good. One should. But, really through like the laws of the country and the government.
And so, you operate that way systemically in my experience of you at CU.
I do. I mean, I think I carry that feeling of like things should be different, and they can be different, and we shouldn't be complacent, and also we shouldn't believe the lies. And so, and there's no reason one shouldn't speak out. Like that being quiet isn't going to serve anyone.
Did Counterpath help you build your voice, or was your voice already megaphoned, and Counterpath was a natural evolution for you? And can you talk about what Counterpath
sure. So Counterpath is the community art space, food bank, community garden, free bookstore, and performance space that Tim Roberts and I run together. And I think, I grew up as an activist child. Like,
you did.
My mother
you made signs.
Yes, I made signs. I painted peace signs on my face. My mother was an anti-war activist. My dad probably too, but really they divorced when I was very, very young. And so most of this experience was with her.
You marched with your mom.
I marched with my mom. She was super active in the anti-war movement in Cambridge and Boston. She was like very central and organized a lot of things, and I was there. And so, that was just what I understood. Like, that's how you be in the world, is you go to these things.
You activate.
Yeah.
And
like,
show
that's
up.
just part of life. So I did that throughout my childhood, throughout being a teenager.
You didn't rebel and like sit back as a way to rebel against your mom?
No.
And go Michael P. Keaton on her?
No. Nope. And so, protest movements, we could talk about this forever, like whether, in this today, whether marches or I don't know. We have, there's a lot to say about like what works and what doesn't work and ways things are co-opted and, but anyway, that was definitely how I was raised. And so, when Tim and I met, which was in like 1997 or 1996, I was a person who would be like, we got to go to the march. And he was kind of like, oh, we find another way, and
a counterpath.
A counterpath, exactly, precisely. So his, really both of our idea, but his idea was that we would start something literary. And it would be maybe a press, maybe a bookstore,
or all the things.
Yeah, exactly. Turned out to be all the things. So when he and I started Counterpath, I don't think we had the idea that it was somehow an activist project at all. It was a literary project. But there was, I think he had a really deep understanding and always has had a very deep understanding of the relationship between the two. And that to make art and support artists is a form of activism and it is a counter path, and it does speak back, and it does offer a crucial other world. And I think I was not so clear on that then, but I was excited to go along. And so we started Counterpath, and at first we were really just doing like poetry, really, and fiction, and that was great. And then it was coming to Denver. We ended up buying this garage, and we were like, oh, look at us. Now we're the gentrifiers, because we know that an art space in a not wealthy neighborhood is usually the first step. Mm-hmm. After the art space goes the cafe, and then it all follows that. And again, to hold complexities, you can't just condemn that move, because at the same time, like, the neighborhood is excited and happy to have us. So, I'm not saying like everyone, but a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we immediately really, I'll just credit Tim in this thinking, but was immediately like, we got to do it different. Like, if we're going to kind of be here and we don't live in this neighborhood, we have to do things that are neighborhood centric. We can't just bring our avant-garde blah-de-blah into this neighborhood.
So did the garden start?
So the garden started in kind of response to that.
Oh, I love that.
Loved gardening, but that was part of it. It was we'll make a community garden, we'll invite people. Also, we had our first opening was called the Open Opening, where anybody could bring anything that they thought of as art. And actually it was one of my favorite events we've ever had. And we've done the list goes on. There's a ton of, neighborhood-centric events and projects that have happened and that keep happening there. And
that build community.
Yeah. There. Yeah. Oh, definitely. We don't really have community where we live, which is in a much more affluent neighborhood. So everyone knows that story. That neighborhood, there's not really that kind of community.
Yes,
it's all
complicated.
Very complicated. And community gardens are complicated, and urban gardening, it's an interesting project because it doesn't really produce food at the level that it's needed. So we run a food bank, and the food that we give away, we thought, oh, we'll grow all this food and we'll give it all away. Sure, we do that, but it's a tiny fraction of the food we give away.
And more of it comes from the donations.
No, it comes from We Don't Waste mostly. It comes from donations, but also from We Don't Waste. And We Don't Waste is amazing. And it's crates and crates and crates of zucchini. So what the garden ends up being is an experience for me and everyone else.
And to know where zucchini really comes from.
And people who love gardening show up and they participate. And different years, there's different numbers of people and different groups of people, but it's a way to be together, and to do something that everybody loves doing. And then, sure, you take home some vegetables. Yeah.
There is something about every aspect of you that could take an hour, at least, for us to stay with. And so I hate to even have to wrap us up, but I'm going to have to. But I have to tell, I'm going to do a truth, and then we're going to go to the quick and dirty. Okay. My truth is that I have always been so intimidated by you.
Oh my God.
I have been so afraid to be in conversation with you because I thought there's no way I'm as cool as Julie Carr.
Oh, that's crazy.
And then the way to get over intimidation of someone, which is just to read what they send you and what matters to them and to fall in love. And I have this week like so fallen in love with Julie Carr that I can now say I have no intimidation. I have no weird, misplaced, not cool kid. I have, like really. And then getting to sit with you in that love, it's and to get to just see you be you and talk about you and your voice. And I feel so super lucky.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie.
I had no idea you were. That's silly.
It's now I know it's silly. Now I just think you're like, I always thought you were cool, but I thought you were like cool. And now I'm like, and now I love how cool you are. Because I'm like metabolizing that as part of me and I'm learning about myself through you. So I just want to say thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really a gift.
Thank you.
Okay. You ready to go quick and dirty?
Sure.
Okay. So as fast as you can.
Okay.
Whatever comes forward. Okay. 2 people you would like to read letters between.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not very fast.
I know no one is.
Okay. Gerard Manley Hopkins, whose letter I have read, and Emily Dickinson. Why not?
I love that. Okay. If you started a band, what kind of music would you play and what would the name of the band be with and in it?
With and in it?
Yeah, it's got to have, it could be like blank and blank, or it could be band of horses.
Oh, right. Okay. Let's call it mint leaves and frog legs. Okay.
Great. And what kind of music is this?
Name, I think it has to be some weird kind of like folk hybrid band. Yes. I'm not a musician at all.
I love how quickly mint leaves came up. Like it's definitely mint leaves.
Mint leaves is fine, but like how are you going to like deal with mint leaves, which is so, bucolic? You have to give it something else.
You got to give it something with a... Okay, great. Your activist bumper sticker with and in it.
Oh, God. Read, and... All right, we'll just go with it. Read and dance.
Read and dance. I love it. Right there with you. A food that is much better made, not necessarily by you, but it could be by you because you cook, made better in your kitchen than in a restaurant.
Oh, God. I'm sorry. Everything.
Everything. So and. But a favorite that right now you're kind of like in the throes of late summer.
Yeah. So like tomato, corn, basil, red onion salad with a lot of olive oil and roasted or broiled eggplant, really, really well cooked. So it's sweet. Yeah.
You're hitting mine. I'm like squeezing my salad.
Yeah. With like a yogurt sauce that has some salt in it and some olive oil and lemon.
Can it be yogurt sauce without cucumber?
Sure.
If I'm coming over.
I don't need the cucumber.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I'm coming over. All right. The combination of things you need to get into writing mode.
Oh, books. I have to be reading for sure. Solitude and coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything in the coffee or just?
Yeah, milk.
Milk. Okay. An Andrew you admire.
Oh, somebody who does multiple things that I admire? Ralph Lemon. Adore. J'adore
Ralph Lemon. Yes. Yeah, I was so lucky to be at University of Illinois when Ralph was in residency for 3 years and Giselle came back into my life, who you've worked with. Oh, yeah. But Ralph Lemon.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Over and over.
His films, his visual work, his everything.
His talking.
Yeah.
Just his humaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, because I didn't get to ask this question, I'm going to ask it in the quick and dirty. I know 2 ways that you've described pink, but can I have 4 ways to describe pink, to be specific?
Okay. So there's like behind the ear pink, kind of, for some of us. There's like the pink of like a cow's tongue. There's... I'm just in the body, I guess. Yeah, there's definitely nipple pink.
Yeah.
And then I guess there's also, let me think, like there's the pink of, I'll steal one for myself. That bedspread pink, I was really happy with that.
I love that bedspread pink.
Because like, it's not there's could be any kind of bedspread pink, but we all know what we mean when we say bedspread pink.
Oh, yeah. we know, even if it's not, we're not thinking of the same.
It's still the
room,
same.
It's the same.
It's the feeling of
it. It's the feeling of the bedspread pink.
Yeah.
Yeah. That and roller rink pink is my other.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. If you were giving a blessing to a graduating class, to someone going off into a new adventure, and you were to begin it with, and what would it be?
And I started with the word and. Mm-hmm. Okay. And rest. I mean, there's something about like so many of those blessings are about like, go forth and conquer. Now change the world. And it's like, maybe you just finished something, so rest, and then we'll see.
And that was Julie Carr, poet, writer, professor of creative writing, and chair of Women and Gender Studies at the University of Colorado Boulder. The Ampersand is a production of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Colorado Boulder. It is written and produced by me, Erika Randall, and Tim Grassley. If there are people you'd like us to interview on the Ampersand, do please email us at asinfo@colorado.edu. Our theme music was composed and performed by Nelson Walker, and the episodes are recorded at Interplay Recording in Boulder, Colorado. I'm Erika Randall, and this is The Ampersand.